Now, one of the things is I still, even though we were living in Rock Hall, I was still enrolled in school. Of course, school is now in the other parish. School is in St. Catherine, over very far away from where I was. And so I actually, back in Independence City, in fact, and so which was quite it's the next, essentially the next state over. So I had to make my way to school. And so what I would do is, for some reason, I don't remember how we got money. Maybe my mom must have sent a few dollars for money. I don't remember that part, but I do remember when it was time to go to school, there were two shifts. I guess maybe because of the amount of volume of student that went to the Independence City all-age school that was essentially primary school that I attended. Maybe there was just so many kids. They had what was called morning shift and evening shift. And so what that meant is that some students would come to school from like 7 o'clock in the morning till about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or 12 noon, I can't remember the time. And then the next shift would come in and would go from like 12 noon to about 5 o'clock. So that was sort of 5 or 6 o'clock, I can't remember, but it sort of branched off that way so that they could accommodate the volume of students that were coming in. And so me leaving Rock Hall to get, if I was on the morning shift, that was okay, because then I'd have to take two different buses, and that's one of the things. To get to school, I had to walk from where I was, walk by the graveyard, walk straight down to the square. You get on a bus that's on a schedule, of course, and then you get down to Kingston. Then you had to take a second bus that took you all the way across town to school. And it took quite a while, like maybe 2 to 3 hours before you finally get to school. And so you'd spend an awful lot of time on the road getting back and forth to school. And these buses were never really on time because of the distance. So even if you got to one point and you got there at a reasonable time, the next bus could be late. And so that happened a lot. But what really happened was I actually ended up on the evening shift. And so getting to school in the morning was fine. But then coming home, the bus would be late, you would end up on a bus would break down, and so then you were on the last bus out, or a second to last bus out, and you didn't want to miss the last bus because then you'd be stuck in downtown Kingston. You'd have to sleep in a park, which I saw lots of people do, but I didn't want to find out what happened sleeping in the downtown park in Kingston, which was not very safe even at that time many years ago. And so you get from Independence City to Kingston, essentially to get on the bus to go to St. Andrew, to go to Rock Hall. And when you get there sometime, the bus would be late. You get on the bus, and by the time I got to Rock Hall, sometimes it would be very late, like 10 o'clock at night, 10:30 at night. When you live somewhere where there's not a lot of electricity, people go to bed very early. And so you get there and it's extremely desolate. You don't see anyone at all. And what was really interesting is the neighborhood that we lived in, it seemed like nobody else lived down in that area, because I don't ever remember too many people walking in that direction. So what would happen is that you'd start walking and it would be pitch dark, but you'd have that one last light that you'd walk by. And then after that, you would get to the point where you knew it was the last light, and until you got to your house. And so you started walking, and look, I'm 8 years old. I mean, I'm a city kid, but you've heard lots of stories, and every little sound is, it's kind of scary out there, and you're walking in the dark out there, and there's lots of these stories about half man, half bull, and they call them rolling calves in Jamaica. It was just sort of a mythology. But at the time, we didn't really believe in that stuff, but I was a little bit more concerned about what I didn't know, the unknown. And so you're walking in the dark out there, and then, you'd make it fairly well until you got to the bottom of the hill, where, and then from the bottom of the hill, we had to, our house was much further up there. And so you'd start running from that point, and you'd be screaming because you have to go by the graveyard, because my family had sold part of the property to this graveyard that was next door, immediately next door, that you had to pass by in order to actually enter, get into our home. So you'd start running from the bottom of the hill, running by the graveyard, screaming, "Open the door! Open the door!" And you hope somebody would open the door to let you in. And at first there was only a lamp at the time, because we didn't immediately have electricity. So you didn't, they could just turn out the lamp, and that was it. There was nothing that's going to come on there, and you had to run all the way in there. And eventually we got light, and that was helpful when you finally got there. But that's essentially what every evening on an evening shift would feel like. There was nobody going home with you at that point to escort you home. And, God forbid, if you bump into someone in the dark out there, it's going to scare the hell out of you also. Now, after having several of these experiences, and nobody seemed to be interested in whether or not I went to school or not, I just stopped going one day, because my siblings had stopped going to school also, and eventually I just stopped going. And what was interesting about that is that there was no accountability there. I literally just stopped. And I did not end up going to school. When it was all said and done, I did not attend school for about a year and a half. And apparently those year and a half timelines were the time that I was supposed to learn basically, a certain level of English where you put in your commas and where you put in your periods and past tense, present tense, all those kind of things. And so it took me many, many years, and even to this day, sometimes I struggle and say words in the wrong tense, or I have to really pay attention to things to make sure I'm putting the right commas in the right places, etc. So it had a very lasting effect on me because of that experience.